Hello world, you are watching Archie Television and I am your host, Lawrence Archie. Welcome, returning viewers, welcome new viewers. You're watching the first installment to a four-part tutorial series where we will model, texture, rig, etc. When last I left you, we did just that. We modeled and we textured our teeth. And without further ado, we're going to move forward with the texturing portion of our modeling tutorial series, and we're going to start to texture our tiny character right here. So without further ado, let's jump in here. I want to set up a number of 3 textures. So let's name this texture. Let's name it body. Body. Let's add another texture. Let's add another texture. Let's add one more. And the second texture, let's call it eye. And on this third texture, let's call it pupil. Let's go up to our body texture and let's just hover over any vertex that's connected to the body and hit L. With that selected, let's hit the sign. Let's go to our eye texture. Hover over any vertex inside the eye and let's do the same thing. And let's hit period on our numpad. Let's turn on our screen cascades. Screen cascades. Let's hit N, start display. And let's hit assign to those keys. And if we go to body and we hit select, you can see our bodies, the vertices associated with our body. If we go to eye and we hit select, we can see the vertices associated with our eye. So let's come in here and let's control tab, and let's bring up our face mode. Let's hit C for circle select. Let's select all these eyes that we want to use for our pupil. So again, with pupil selected, we hit select. We'll see the vertices and faces, what have you, associated with the pupil. With our eye selected, we can see the vertices and faces associated with our pupil, and with our body selected, we can see those vertices associated with our body. So let's hit A to deselect all that, and let's begin work on these guys. First off, I want to come in here and I want to add a mix shader to my body shader. I want to add a diffuse and I want to add a glossy. With the diffuse, let's come in here and let's select this texture. Let's give that a render. See what our let's undo that. Let's back out of that. Let's change our camera so we can get a better look at Tiny himself. Control Alt Numpad 0. Come in here and select our object mode. So we can select the camera. If we hit G, Z, we can zoom out on the Z axis. So let's come in here back to our body. With our body selected, let's come in here to our factor of our glossy, and let's set our glossy, our factor between our glossy and our diffuse to say 0.25 or something like that. And let's give that a render, see how that plays out. And on our, we want to make sure our subsurf, is active when we render. We just want to Let's come in here and let's hit Control S so we can have our cursor at the center. Let's hit Shift A so we can bring in another mesh. 7 on the numpad. Let's scale up. Let's move this forward on the on the y-axis, and let's rotate it. Let's make sure we have our pivot point selected to bounding box. A hotkey to decipher between the two is period and comma. If you have period, it rotates around your 3D cursor, wherever your 3D cursor is located. But if you have it, if you hit comma, it'll rotate around your pivot point. It'll rotate around your bounding box, and that's what we want to rotate around. Currently, we want to rotate around our bounding box. Let's get this in place. Let's move it back a little bit more. Move it back a little bit more, out the way of the camera, so the emitting plane won't be sitting in front of the camera. It won't be in the way of the camera and our mesh. And I apologize, you guys, if I sound a little funny right now. My sinuses are really beating down on me. As you can hear the congestion in my voice. I apologize about that, guys. But back to the tutorial. Let's hit 7 on the numpad key. Let's select our mesh, Control S, cursor to select it. Let's hit period. And let's make sure our plane is selected. From top down view, let's hit rotate. We rotate this to say about 45 degrees. So we can get us a nice prominent light source. Let's go into our side facing view. Let's hit R. Let's hit 4 on the numpad, number 3 times. Let's hit comma 1 on numpad. Excuse me, let's hit comma. The comma that's above the space bar, not the comma that's associated with the numpad keys. We don't want to extrude that. That's not what I'm looking for, but let's hit R. Let's rotate that. And then let's pull that up just a little bit. Let's hit S to scale that up. Let's come in here. Let's add emission texture to that. Let's give it a quick render. Possibly we can turn that up just a little bit. Say about 15. Let's give that a render. We have a little bit of noise going on in here. We just want to get a relative idea of what Tiny will look like, texture, and there you have it. So currently, right now, we want to come in here and we want to start texturing our eyes. Again, let's add a mix shader. To this mix shader, let's have a diffuse and let's have a glossy mix shader. Glossy mix shader. Glossy, there you go. And this time, unlike the first time, we kind of want our glossy shader to be a little more even killed. We want it to be a nice mix between our diffuse and our glossy. With that being said, let's come in here and let's come into our pupil and let's add a texture's already added to that. So let's come in here and let's render that. See what we have. And let's come back. Let's turn on our. Okay. So for the most part, our character, he's textured for the most part. There you have it. Tiny has been textured. And to add a little more play, say, to our Tiny character, we can come in here and we could add another plane. We could pull this plane forward. Come in here and Control S, cursor to selected. Let's hit period. with our let's hit comma. So it rotates around the box. Let's hit period. So it'll rotate around the 3D cursor. 7 on the numpad. And let's rotate that, say about. Well, the problem that we're having here is we're trying to rotate two objects around each other that are a part of the same object. So let's come in here, let's select this face right here that we choose, that we want to use for our admission. We come in here, we could take off the subsurf. We don't necessarily need the subsurf for that. We can hit L. We can come back into object mode, top facing view. Rotate that, say about 90 degrees. 90 degrees. So we can get us a nice little shade going on with that. Let's hit period. Comma. Come on, man. There we go. Yeah, it's comma. And let's come in here. Let's add an emission. Clear all this up. Let's add an emission. Just want to make sure our texture still had its textures. Let's make this say, let's give it a blue tint. Let's lighten that up just a tad bit. We don't want it the same strength as our dominant light, so let's give that a render. Possibly want to scale that up just a little bit. Give that another render. You can begin to see our shade starting to bounce off of our character. And if we come in here, go to top facing view, we come into object mode and we add us a lamp. And we add us a spot lamp. So our front facing view, let's rotate that. And let's bring it behind our character. This is what you call our main 3-point lighting system. These are the main 3 lights that you want to use when you're trying to add light to your scene. And so we add this, I'll bump this up to say about 500. This light that's behind the character is what will make the character bounce, pop off from the background. Our main light up here is what, of course, give the character light. This is what gives the character shade, and this is what separates the character from the background. And without further ado, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time. I pray that you're enjoying this tutorial series, and I pray that you'll continue with me and Archie Television as we continue through phase 1. You can like me on Facebook, you can follow me on Twitter, and if you're going to dream big, as always. Good night, guys.